Hello, everyone. Glad to have you once again on this edition of the Discourse. I guess we got to introduce ourselves for those who might not know us. My name is David Osai Opon, and we have
Wisdom Klachu.
All right. So we realized that when we were putting out the announcement for the Discourse, this particular edition, quite a number of people were asking us, what is this whole thing about?
What are we going to talk about?
So before we even delve into what we have for today, we want to talk about a little bit about what is the discourse about. What is the discourse about? So I'm going to start.
Right.
So basically, the discourse happens to be a show or a program that stemmed out of our private dealings. Pastor Wisdom is a friend of mine. We have a lot of discussions. We have different discussions pertaining to different issues. Then one particular day as we were having our discussion, we thought, why not bring this discussion to the public? Because we think some of the things we are discussing are very pertinent issues that people need to hear and probably even have the chance to be involved in. Most of our discussions were pertaining or bordering around issues like theism, atheism, culture, religion, current affairs, amongst others. So basically, the discourse is a chat between two friends.
Basically.
Yeah.
And yes, and we're also hoping that as we go along, any other views that people might have, they could bring them in. Any other topics that people might feel that we could talk about, they could let us know, and then we'll consider them in our future discussions. But for now, this is where we are, and we have a very great topic today to talk about.
Wonderful topic.
And I believe that will interest everyone. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So without wasting much time, we are going right into it. We'll ask that you are very interactive as the program goes on. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can utilize the chat section. If you are watching us on Facebook, you can use the comment section as well to interact. You can put up some of your questions there. You can put up some of your concerns there. And one thing I'd like to say is that most of the discussions we have, we understand that people have polarized views about them. We still have to have them anyways. This is just discussions. So let us, even when we disagree, let us just put out our opinions in a very good way, and then we'll be able to have a productive time. It is my hope that every one of us will be impacted with today's discussion.
And even also based on what you just said now, it's our hope that for those people that have not formed an opinion, and for those people that mainly lack more information about the things they believe in, the things they already hold dear, which most of it might stand with what we already, the things we are saying here, they would have a better idea of these things. They would form a better opinion on some of these topics. So it's an attempt to even more or less convince people about some of the thoughts that we have.
Great.
Hoping that they would stand with us. Yeah.
All right. So without wasting my time, we are going to delve right into it. Today's discussion, the topic is Science versus Christianity. Science versus Christianity. You know, many times when you hear science versus Christianity, a certain idea comes to your mind. The idea that science is against Christianity or vice versa. Because over the years, that's how the picture has been painted. And so many people, when they hear science and Christianity, the first thing that comes to their mind is contradiction, contradiction, contradiction. They believe that everything that science stands against everything that Christianity stands for. Because of that, we would like to even talk a little bit about contradiction today, so that we can put together the rest of the conversation. So to talk about contradiction, the law of non-contradiction states that a statement and its denial cannot both be true at the same time.
Right.
A statement and its denial cannot both be true at the same time. Let me give an example. Kofi is married to Amma. Kofi is not married to Amma. Now, these two statements, statement A is Kofi is married to Amma. Statement B is Kofi is not married to Amma. What's going to happen here is that A is the statement, and then statement B is the denial of the statement. It denies the first statement. The first statement is that Kofi is married to Amma. The second statement is Kofi is not married to Amma. Since statement B is a complete denial of statement A, statement B contradicts statement A. So these two statements gives us a classic example of contradiction.
Okay.
I've realized that the challenge that comes along with contradictions and calling them out is that sometimes, because of the nuances involved, many people seem to assume that there are contradictions in a case where really there isn't. Remember that the law of non-contradiction is saying that they both cannot be true at the same time. That means that if there is any slight opportunity statement can be true, then you are not permitted to quickly call in a contradiction. One perfect example of a nuanced kind of contradiction that people like to call is Kofi is married to Amma. Statement A. Statement B. Kofi is married to Ya. Without thinking about it and trying to look into it, you might quickly say, this is contradicting each other. Why? If Kofi is married to Amma, why is Kofi married to Ya also? But the point is that to be able to tell whether there's a contradiction, we've got to ask ourselves, is there any possibility to be true at the same time? If there's no possibility that they can be true at the same time, it's a contradiction. But if there's a possibility that they can be true at the same time, then there's no contradiction. Now, if we consider the idea of a polygamous marriage, where one man can be married to more than one woman, it gives us or supplies the possibility for both statements to be true. So, upon face value, someone might say these two statements are contradictory. But when you now start discussing possibilities, you realize that indeed, Kofi is married to Amma is not a contradictory statement to Kofi is married to Ya. What do you think, man?
That's very, very, very nice things you're saying. You know, the idea that goes around that Christianity and then science are two contradictory entities, in a sense that if you are a scientist, you cannot be a person of faith. I always give the example as a young boy whose parents raised him as a Christian. Let me just use Christian. Raised him in faith or as a Christian. Right from his childhood. These parents probably are illiterate. They never went to school, and so they know nothing about science. All they know is they have their God that they worship, and then they are raising their child in faith, in Christianity. This child they put in school, and then the child is a very intelligent student, so he goes all the way, and then he's a very renowned scientist. And naturally, people should think that as this child goes and advances in science, he should automatically put aside his beliefs in Christianity, because the knowledge he's receiving in science is in clear contradiction to the beliefs that his parents were hoping to raise him in. But that's not been the case, because when you consider, like you're saying, contradiction, the law of non-contradiction is a very simple concept, right? It says that it is impossible for two things, for something to be and not to be at the same time in the same respect. So something that is cannot also not be at the same time. And we don't realize how often we use these concepts. And one of it cuts across simple things all the way to complex things. You give an example of someone being married to one person, and you cannot easily call out a contradiction just because another name has been mentioned that this person is married to two people. But in our society, it's possible for one person to be married to two people. What's something? What is a very beautiful example that it happens, and we all know it, a lot of people know it, the issue of alibi. And we hear the word alibi in court a lot, where one guy has been accused of killing his neighbor. They said that the neighbor was shot in his house at 7 p.m. Based on the forensic reports, they say that this guy was shot, he died at 7 p.m. So he was probably shot at that time. There's a crime scene. And the suspect is his neighbor. So this guy that is being accused, they ask him, do you have an alibi? An alibi is simply you telling us what you were doing at 7 p.m. That proves you're innocent. If
basically anything that is pinning you away from the crime scene.
Exactly. So if I was accused of shooting someone, and then I say, no, I could not have been the one shooting this guy, because at 7 p.m., the time you are stating, I was with David. We were at a bar. Go ask the bartender, we were there. So as long as I have David and the bartender and some of our friends to say the same or to agree,
or even a CCTV camera at the bar.
Exactly. To corroborate our story, it means that I could not have been there. So saying that I could not have been at the bar and also be at the crime scene at the same time, in the same respect. That means that these two are in contradiction. So you see, the law of non-contradiction, it says it all. The Christian faith, we have found that it is not in contradiction to science.
Great.
A person can clearly be in both institutions at the same time and not have conflict in his heart.
So if I got what you are saying that God does not have to be non-existent for science to be true.
Exactly. So all the claims of science, there are many different claims. People talk about how that does the concept of neurology discard a person having a spirit. Can a person have a human spirit when science has all these neurological stuff?
Mm-hmm.
How can those two? But they are not in contradiction to each other.
Great.
You see, and the issue, we will talk about many of these things today. There is the issue of the creation of the world. You see, people say
one major question a lot of people have said,
and which we definitely would tackle.
Mm-hmm.
People say that how do we reconcile the creation story and evolution and Big Bang theory? How do you reconcile these things? And these are the major reasons why people think that it is not realistic or it's not even possible for someone to be in both institutions.
Great.
Which is something that we hope to address in this video.
Beautiful. Before we move away from this, I just want to touch on your alibi point. I think that's a very, very strong point. So with what you were saying, it means that supposing the crime happened at 7 p.m. on a particular day, and on that set day, you have an alibi pinning you to a certain club or bar which is far away from the crime scene. And then let's say there's footage, CCTV footage.
Mm-hmm.
What you are saying is that because we know that per what we know so far, per the knowledge we have so far, a human being cannot multiply himself to be at two places at the same time.
Exactly.
It means that if this guy is on the verge of being sentenced for the crime, and then the evidence of a video pinning him at the same time of the crime to a different place appears or surfaces, that evidence in itself should be enough to acquit him.
Acquit him. It is more than enough.
More than enough.
That is actually all they need.
So nobody can say, like after bringing this,
the evidence, you can't be asking for more.
You can't say, so what? He wasn't there. So
he was not there.
Or he was at the bar. So does that mean he was not here at the same time?
That is logic. That is reason. You see, and man of God, some of the things that I don't know whether I can even get a chance to get into, not even get ahead of ourselves. But reason is one of those things that comes into play. Why would any two people, when did we agree that when a person presents evidence saying that I was here and not here, be all that we require and not ask for more to acquit this guy?
To acquit him.
It is reason. That is what reason affords us. So even when it comes to scientific things, reason is one of the things that we use to draw that line, and very much helps us in such things. Law of contradiction is not scientific. It's not scientific. It is just a reasonable thing to do. It's just the most reasonable way to go.
Great.
Right.
Awesome. So I believe that if you are watching us and you are following the discussion, by now you should start getting intrigued at how the discussion is going. We have a lot more for you today. I'm beginning to think, man of God, that we need to do a part 2 of this discussion, because I don't think we can put everything we have to discuss today within today's program. But let's just see how it goes. Let's see how far we can take it. So that's basically the law of non-contradiction. Basically serves as an introduction to today's discussion concerning science and Christianity.
Yes. So the basic, long and short of all we are trying to say is that as long as we are not finding clear contradictions between Christianity and science, there is no reason why both of them cannot be in the same room.
Great.
There's no reason why one person cannot have both and still be at peace.
Basically, the existence of God does not annul science.
Yes, neither does science annul the existence of God.
Great. All right, so let's move on. Now we are going to begin to actually delve into the body of today's discussion concerning this science versus Christianity matter. I'm going to start with a statement, and I believe that the statement will form an umbrella for many other branches to be discussed.
Yeah.
Now, this is a statement. A statement or a theory cannot be judged by its abuse.
Okay.
A theory should not and cannot be judged by its abuse. What am I saying? Let me put it this way. Let's say that there's a man in an area. And I know that all of us have lived in areas before. I think this example should really... Because I remember in my area when I was growing up, there was a certain man. He had a mango tree in his house. And a lot of people would like, young boys like us during vacation, would like to go and pluck some of the mangoes and then enjoy ourselves. Now, the thing was, there was a wall around the man's house. Mm-hmm. And we had been told that the man is an old soldier and has a gun. And that there was a time that someone climbed his wall trying to take some of the mango. And then the man shot him. And nobody could say anything about it. Mm-hmm. So everybody was scared. But these mangoes arrived and nice. And it always looked as if nobody lived in the house. But nobody, as if, actually, this man, hey, if you go there, he'll kill you, he'll kill you. So then everybody was afraid. Only very bold guys will go climb that wall, in the afternoon when they feel like nobody's in the house. They'll go, then they come back with their story of how they were able to climb and get the mango. Nobody caught them, and we'll be sitting the young boys. Hey, we're excited at our area heroes. These guys are bold, they're not afraid of death and all of that. Then one day, what happened was that they went back on one of these expeditions to get the mangoes. So they got there, climbed. Just as they were about to leave, the old soldier they were talking about came out. Oh boy. He came out. If you're watching, I say he came out. He came out. At this point, these guys were standing there wondering, is this their last breath in life? To their amazement, man of God, the old man said, is that all you are taking? Take more. There's more. Even some like yesterday there was so many I packed it. Come and take it and send it. They were wondering what's going on. Has he poisoned the thing or what? Like, what's going on? Then they were shocked. They were shaking. Is this the same person they are talking about? Mm-hmm. Apparently, there had been a lie fed into the minds of people. Concerning the person and his personality.
Yeah.
So there was an abuse of the truth. And that abuse was what we judged him by. For which reason we walked around in the area saying that this man is wicked. If you step in his house to take mango, he'll kill you.
Meanwhile, he wanted to come for the mango.
So if we judged him according to the thwarted, abused communication, wrong, untrue communication about him, what's going to happen is that if we judge that communication accurately, we would have been judging the man wrongly.
Very true.
So we cannot judge a theory, a person, an entity by its abuse. When people have communicated a wrong communication about this thing, if we use this wrong information to judge, no matter how well we judge that information, we would have been judging that person or that entity wrongly.
That's very true.
This brings my mind to the abuse of Christianity and the abuse of science. The abuse of Christianity and the abuse of science. At any point in time, what I've realized is that should one of the parties be abused, then we will begin to point out contradictions that are not there. Because whereas we are casting the judgment on the abuse, it's going to be a wrong judgment because that is not really the real issue. If you are judging science on its abuse or on its wrong purported information out there, you think that you definitely arrive at a contradiction against Christianity.
Yes.
Same with Christianity. If you are seeing Christianity in the wrong light, if you are seeing Christianity with not enough information, that is why it is said that before you ever attempt to argue against Christianity, spend time to know what is Christianity really saying about this. If you don't know what Christianity is saying, how then do you know you don't agree?
Exactly. You know, man of God, I have watched many people try to take on Christians. Many of these atheists try to take on Christians. And you find that whereas they know so much about their science, you find how little they know about the Christian faith. You find some of them talk about, I've read the entire Bible before. And so that seems to be enough reason to think that they know all that Christianity stands for. But yet, I wonder if some of these people sit down to wonder, what about the other person that I know who is probably even a better scientist than I am, and yet believes is with these people, is
Christians.
The Christians. What about that person? How is he able to sleep at night? How has he been able to find a harmony,
a place of reconciliation,
a place of like a harmony between Christianity and the sciences? That,
synchrony.
That's a better word. So you see that those people that set out to fight Christianity, fight religion, it's clearly because they know very little about what it says.
This is bringing a statement to my mind that if you fight your own version of Christianity, you always win.
Because the reason why I even have an issue with it is because it is your own version. You have drawn for yourself a picture of what it is, and that's the picture you have an issue with. But just maybe if you find out what they really stand for, what these people really believe in on these topics, you might still disagree.
Yeah.
But then this time around, you will at least be fighting the right view. You will not be fighting a wrong idea of a wrong version of what you think it is.
This brings my mind to the concept of prejudice, where you judge before the fact, where you judge without having the facts on the ground, or judge with wrong information about the issue.
Yes, having predetermined ideas of what things should be. And even this, it goes a long way to talk about the fact that sometimes you can even question, are these people really against Christianity, or they have formed their own predetermined concept, or they have their own bias, and based on their bias, they are out to establish their bias. They are just using science to support their bias. And that's what many people do. How to use science to support their bias. They say they are scientists, and yet all that science says does not entirely support their argument.
You know, with what you are saying, it's very true. Like this. Like many times, actually, it has been proven factually. I probably need to gather the exact statistics on that. That many atheists did not arrive at atheism with science. They had one experience or the other in the past.
Yes.
And then later on discovered science. And then based on that experience, claimed that science that made me an atheist. For example, there's a guy whose father died before he was giving birth to, and then whilst the mother was giving birth to him, the mother died, and then maybe an auntie decided to take care of him, and as time was going on, just as the auntie was about to help him to enter some university, the auntie died of some mysterious sickness, or the auntie was diagnosed of a mysterious sickness. He goes praying to God, God, heal my auntie, and God didn't heal the auntie, and the auntie died. And then when the auntie died, he went to the church to try and find out, how can the church help him? And that particular church at the time said they didn't have any help to give him. Then he saw his other friend who was held by the church in such a situation, but that other friend does not even come to church like him, does not arrange church like him, does not give offering like him. And so then he sits back and says, this church and this God, I have problem with these people. And so this guy grows up, goes to school, finds some hard way to finally enter school, and come and say, with science that is making me say God is not there.
But it's not science. Man of God, how could science tell you that? Science is not able to prove God. How can something that's not able to prove God tell you that God doesn't exist?
Madilas.
Something that cannot help you arrive at a conclusion that he doesn't exist. And these are the things we'll be dealing with, in this particular session.
So at this point, man, I want to bring in this discussion. In talking about the abuse of Christianity and the abuse of science, one popular term comes to mind when it comes to the abuse of science, which is pseudoscience.
Okay.
Pseudoscience. I'd like to read a scripture, and I think the scripture will also be put up there for you to look at, so you can follow. Pseudoscience is a thing that scriptures have spoken about. I'll first go to the scripture, and then I'll come back to discuss it. So let's read from the book of 1 Timothy, chapter 6. I'll read from verse 19 to 21. To 20, let me read to 20. 1 Timothy 6, 19 to 20. The emphasis is on 20. That's where the discussion is going to be. So I go. Laying up, this verse 19, laying up in store for themselves a good foundation against time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life, Now, this is where the emphasis is on. I want you to look at this. It says, "O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called." Avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called. This scripture is bringing to our minds vain babblings, profanity, oppositions, where people have falsely termed as science. This comes, like I said, complete description of pseudoscience. What's pseudoscience? Now, listen to this. Pseudoscience consists of statements, beliefs, and practices that claim to be both scientific and factual, but are actually incompatible with the scientific method. Let me take it again. Pseudoscience, and I would like our guys to also project it there so everybody can read this. Pseudoscience consists of statements, beliefs. Can you imagine science talks about beliefs? Beliefs and practices that claim to be both scientific and factual, but actually are incompatible with the scientific method. So you understand that when it comes to pseudoscience, it is basically an abuse of science, where people will feed in external conclusions and claim that science got them to that place. One of the reasons why we have these problems is this. One major reason why we have these problems is this. Many times, people refuse to accept an inconclusive experiment.
Exactly.
There are experiments that at a particular time or point in time, you don't have enough evidences or enough resources or materials to conclude. When you have an experiment that's inconclusive, tell us that it is inconclusive. You cannot use science to disprove God, because many people who are saying something about God and science, actually, this is what they are doing. There is no evidence that disproves God in science. There is no evidence that disproves God in science. Rather, many did not find enough evidence to prove. And instead of declaring an inconclusive experiment, they say, now feeding in their own external beliefs that he is not there, because there's no conclusive, factual evidence that disproves the existence of God. So at that point in time, they now have to abuse science and enter into pseudoscience and start assuming things that science has not concluded on. How does one go on a search for God through science and say that God does not exist? Rather, he should say, I didn't find.
Wow. Look at this. You know, as successful as science has been over the years in revealing to us many things, in explaining many concepts to us, science has told us a lot of things. All the knowledge we know today, most of the knowledge, all the things we know in science today, science brought those things to us.
Yeah.
But science has still not been successful in a number of fields. What is science? Science is not trying to invent anything. You know, there are different kinds of science. You have the applied science, and you have the natural science. When we talk about science, we are mainly talking about these natural sciences: physics, chemistry, biology.
Great.
These are not trying to invent anything. It's mainly, science is out to explain and investigate things you can observe and measure.
Explain.
And
investigate.
And investigate things you can observe.
Observe and measure. Okay.
If the thing cannot be observed, if it cannot be measured, then science cannot prove it.
So if it cannot be observed and measured, science doesn't have much to say about it yet.
Exactly. As at now, science is unable to prove it. You see, that is what science really is. This is why science is limited to the confines of things, the nature of this world. It's within it can only measure things of nature, things that can be observed, things that can be measured, things you can touch, things you can feel. Not necessarily all the things you can touch, but things that are within the confines of nature.
Of measurability.
Yes. So I was saying earlier, reality is that these realities, they're already there. These are things that science did not come to invent.
Okay.
Science did not invent gravity.
Great.
You know, science didn't invent the forces of nature. Science didn't invent these things. Newton didn't come and invent force.
Yeah.
These things are already there. Science is what explained them to us. So science is more explaining things to us, trying to let us know what reality already is. Reality is not conforming to science. Science is conforming to reality.
Great.
That is why sometimes scientific theories can change. When new information comes to light, then they adjust the theories that they already... That's why they begin scientific theories with hypotheses.
Great.
So we hypothesize that this could be what is going on. And through scientific study, observation, empirical analysis, we can come to a conclusion that this is what it is.
Okay, so from what you are saying, even in a case where science may have concluded on a matter, it is possible that upon chancing on new evidence that hitherto they didn't have,
exactly,
they may want to adjust their conclusion.
They might want to adjust their theories on that matter.
Okay.
The matter will never change because this is reality.
Okay.
So science is not trying to invent anything. Right. Science is just looking to explain things to us. We are talking about proving of things.
All right.
Science, even though has been very successful in expounding to us a lot of different matters, science till today has not been successful in measuring things about things like love. Science has not been successful in matters of meaning and morality. What is meaning? Purpose. So science can tell us what this is meant for, what our body can tell us things about our body, but science is not able to tell us what humanity is here for. What is the purpose of humanity? Purpose of the universe. Science is not able to tell us those things because those are things that it cannot observe, it cannot measure.
So if you understand what you're saying that even as good as science is, because obviously none of us can sit here and say science is not good.
Of course not.
We are actually streaming this program today by virtue of science.
Exactly.
So as good as science is, we've got to admit its limitations.
Those are the limits of scientific method. Okay. Scientific method are the methodology in how to arrive at a conclusion, empirical conclusions, right? These are the limitations of them. There are things of morality. For instance, science can tell us how to make an atomic bomb, but science cannot tell us whether it is good to use one.
Great.
Science cannot measure it.
Great.
Science cannot observe those things. Issues of morality, of purpose, meaning, it cannot measure those things, conscience. So up to today, science cannot, no woman can go to a scientist and tell the scientist to measure how much his husband loves him. Science is unable to do that. Those are the limitations of the scientific method. Now, science is able to measure things within the confines of nature. If science, as of yet, is not able to prove to us or measure love, how do you want us to use empirical evidence to prove the existence of God? That would not be possible.
Great.
So when we talk, and one point that I like to make a lot when it comes to this particular point is that, the particular issue is that we are here to talk about the fact that science and religion, or science and faith, and science and Christianity are not in contradiction. Look at this point, for instance.
From what you're saying, for instance, a very interesting thought just came to mind. It's like this. You want to measure the length of a road using hertz. But length does not exist in the realm of hertz.
Exactly. It's like, one very good example is if you imagined a two-dimensional world, right? Two-dimensional simply means if you have your paper, if you take an A4 sheet and you draw a line horizontally and a line vertically.
That's length and breadth.
Length and breadth. That is a two-dimensional world. Imagine that people, you can draw, you know how we can draw human beings on a paper. Imagine these human beings drawn on a paper who are two-dimensional in the sense that they can only, their reality is only horizontal and vertical. How would we be able to explain to these people that, how do you able to explain to them how a ball is like? we will naturally not be able to explain a ball to them because a ball is spherical. But they only appreciate circles. So we are trying to imagine them using their scientific method, resources available to measure that ball. I always say this, and like I'm trying to make this point very, very clear. We are here to let people realize that science and faith are not in contradiction.
Yeah.
Why do I say this? You see that imagine you were walking by the roadside, and then you look very far. When you gaze away, you saw that there's so much smoke coming from somewhere. What comes to your mind immediately is that there's fire there.
Yeah.
Imagine you don't see the fire. Imagine the fire is, let's say, it's all the way in the valley, right? But you don't see what's going on there. But the amount of smoke coming out, you know that smoke is only caused by fire. What is science? Science is the study of the smoke. Because there is a fire, the smoke is only there because there is fire. The fire is the cause. The smoke is the effect. There is a visible cause. There's a visible effect for an invisible cause. What am I saying here? Science with its scientific method is only a study of the smoke. So we are not in a hurry to use the scientific method we have used to define all the different aspects of the smoke to go into explaining what the fire is. Science is not in a hurry to tell us or disprove the fact that there is fire. The fire exists by itself. That is the cause which we refer to as this whole God thing. But the smoke which we see is what science is doing. Science should not be in a hurry to prove the existence of God because its resources, the limitation of its resources does not permit it to prove the existence of God.
So until science is able to employ a different or a more advanced set of resources, tools and equipment, they may never be able to access the reality of the fire. All they will be limited to is the smoke.
Exactly.
So I think that what you're saying should bring one thing to the minds of everybody, especially scientists. At any point in time, the best and biggest scientists in the world have got to accept science has its limitations.
Exactly.
Science has its limitations. Continuing from where you left off, I want to make a very fundamental statement that would move us into our next set of discussions, which is that the lack of evidence does not suggest the absence of it, or the lack of evidence is not the same as the absence of it. This is what I mean by that statement. I remember recently I was watching a video of a man who was convicted of a crime many years ago. This is a black man. I may not recall his name right now, but it's a very true story. So in the past, when there was not enough technology about fingerprints and others, and so they couldn't even check the fingerprints on the murder weapon, all of that. This guy's case was sent to court concerning a murder, and then he was convicted. He was actually like put on death row, life, and until you are killed, you are dead. So this man has been on death row for many years, over 50 years he's been there, and there was not enough evidence to acquit him at the time his issue went to court. So he was sentenced.
Yes.
After many years, even though there was a lack of evidence at the time, it didn't mean that there was an absence of evidence. Remember, the technology at the time did not allow them access things that was right before them.
That's the beautiful part. The evidence was always there. The evidence was always there. Just that their technology could not access the very evidence. That means that the things we have around us and we talk about, when we say that science is unable to prove it, it does not mean that science it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yes.
But it says that at the moment, science is unable to prove it.
So science cannot prove it yet.
Exactly.
Okay. So just like I was saying, so Later on, one lawyer picks up the guy's case, looks at the case file, says that, no, this issue, it looks far from it that this guy actually committed this thing. Let's go back into it.
This many years after.
Many years after. And after trying, the case was reopened.
Exactly.
And all they had to do was conduct a test on the murder weapon. Now, there's technology to check fingerprints.
To check all those things.
So they checked the fingerprints, paired it to the man's, and realized that it's not the same. Question: how could the man have killed with a weapon that he never touched? Upon the chancing of new evidence, the man was acquitted. 50 years of his life wasted in prison. 50 years. So many times, when we embark on a journey of trying to find something out, I think that the sincerity to say that I don't have enough evidence to conclude on the matter should be there, rather than stop at a point and then assume the rest, and then pretend as if your assumption must be taken as fact. Not every scientific assumption is factual. So it is very important that we understand, like I have already said, there is no scientific evidence to disprove the existence of God. Rather, for many people, science has not yet to them given them enough evidence that he's there. So many atheists will tell you that I'm an atheist because I lack the evidence that God is. Not that I have found evidence that he's not.
Do you know what many people who want to align themselves with atheism and disbelief in a higher power, a higher authority? Someone wrote a book, and look what the person wrote. The person said that this man from MIT, an MIT physicist, he says he compares the logic of scientism to the success of a successful fisherman who claims that based on his success, a fisherman, based on his success, that any fish he does not catch must not exist. After all, there is no fish he cannot catch. You see, this person is saying that, he's comparing someone who says that because I have not found enough evidence, or that means God does not exist, is compared to a fisherman who says that because if there's any fish I have not caught, that fish does not exist. But look at the ocean. Can you have caught every fish? You could not have possibly caught every fish in the ocean. That means that you could not possibly know all the fishes that exist in the sea.
Yeah.
Because you cannot possibly know all the fishes that are in the sea. No matter how successful you are as a fisherman, no matter how successful you are as a scientist, just because you've not caught every single fish in the sea, does not mean that there is some fish you don't know about. Another person compares it to a drunkard who, when he was walking home, he lost his keys by the wayside. And the drunkard says that listen to this very carefully, unless I find the key by where the street light is, the key no longer exists. Why the street light? Because that is where I can see. It is dark all around him. He's saying that he must definitely find his key by where he can see. So, as long as the key is not within where he can see, that means it doesn't exist. But the key can exist somewhere you cannot see. Your scientific method will border around where you can see and measure. But it doesn't mean that anything beyond your scientific method does not exist.
This reminds me of my famous example that I gave some time ago, using my mother as an example and we growing up as children in the house, of how that my mom will tell you, go fetch me this ladle, go get me this saucepan from the kitchen or from the storeroom. And then you go to the storeroom, search. You don't find it. Now, the mistake we used to do as kids was that we come to our mother and say, it is not there. And she looks at us and says, are you sure it's not there? With a very interesting, sarcastic smile on her face. Are you sure it's not there? And we'll foolishly say, yes, it's not there. She tells us, go back and check. Then we'll go and check. And we come back and say, it's not there. Then she says, are you sure it's not there? Still, we say, the thing is not there. Then she gets angry, goes to the storeroom, and comes back with the ladle she's talking about. That is, upon growing, I realized that, listen, when you went the first time and didn't find it, What you should have said was that I did not find it, rather than it is not there. The only way you can say that it is not there is if you know that you have checked every place there is. You see, when you say you've not found, when you say it's not there, it means you trust your abilities just too much to accept that there's a certain limitation on your ability. You see, it gets to a point where saying there's no God is too much belief in yourself.
There's this man, he's called Yuri Gagarin. He went to space, and when he got to space, he says, I'm looking in space and I cannot find God. Did we tell you that you find him when you go to space? Who told you that?
No, but you know the interesting thing? You know the interesting thing? That bacteria in your stomach will never have a sneak peek of how your entire body looks like. That bacteria in your stomach. I'll leave that matter there. I think our time is really getting spent. Let's speed up with this. Now, I have another part of this example, of this discussion to bring in concerning, because, you know, there's this part of the thing where people say things like, you know, these people are saying that, okay, science cannot disprove God's existence. And I think that anyone should agree with us on that matter. If you are thinking pragmatically and using logic, you know that science does not have the capacity to disprove the existence of God. If anything, you can admit that you have not yet accessed enough evidence that God is. With your resources that God is. So how then, if we, the very intelligent people with the highest IQs in the world, have not accessed God, how then you, this guy who doesn't even know, like someone in the village said that there's God. And then this scientist who has won several awards is saying that there's no God, I've calculated everything, there's no God. How could that person be right against the scientist? This is what I have to say about that. I've always said, and I've always thought this way about this matter, that when it comes to science, science comes from the word scientia, which proposes the idea of knowledge. And so, the ability to have a certain high intellectual capacity helps you to understand science better. The higher your IQ, the more intelligent you are, the more we expect that you'll be able to understand science and then practice it very well. So science, I believe, dwells on discovery and the ability to understand the discoveries, the things that you have discovered, the information you have had access to. Christianity is not a religion that stems out of strong intellectual capacity. Christianity is benched on revelation. Someone will say, what's he saying? I'll explain what I'm saying. Someone might say that, or I'll put it this way, that science may dwell or may be benched on discovery, whereas Christianity is benched on revelation. Let me give you this example of an elephant. Let's assume that we are in the year 2021 and elephants are extinct now. There are no elephants anywhere. Let's say they got extinct about 50 years ago. So anyone who has been born within the bracket of 50 years or even 100 years till now has probably never had the chance, the luxury of seeing one with his eyes. Yet there was this family who kept one elephant and hid it because they wanted to keep it away from humanity. Scientists, as powerful as they are, may have gone into research, checking things with archaeology, going back and seeing things and then being able to prove that there used to be an animal called elephant. This is how wide its footsteps and its tracks were. This is how long the tail was, the gestation period of such animals when they're going to give birth. This was the type of bones they had. This was the type of skin they had that allowed them to adapt to their environment, maybe cold weather or hot weather. That's why they were found in this part, this kind of diet they were eating. The scientists would be able to give a very clear picture, even though he might not have ever seen one. But based on the resources available to him in science, he will to explain to you that this is what an elephant most likely would have been like 100 years ago. Now there's this 20-year-old guy or 15-year-old guy who has never taken school serious, doesn't know anything about school, but happens to be in the family where the last elephant that was hidden, he had access to that elephant. This guy actually gets the opportunity to sit on the elephant, touch the elephant, walk with the elephant, dance with it. And then they take him away from the elephant. If they bring these two people to you, scientists and unintelligent guy who has sat on elephants, seen and touched it, if the two of them give you a thorough explanation of an elephant, you will believe the scientist more than the guy. The scientist will actually convince you because you have much more to say. This guy the only thing that this guy can eventually conclude on to prove to you is to tell that, come and see. There's an elephant. You see, the Bible talks about Christians being witnesses. As a Christian, we are not necessarily, as Christians, the yardstick to become a Christian is not that you can explain everything about Christianity, but that you have seen something that you are talking about. That you have witnessed something. You have experienced something that you are talking about. So not every Christian may be able to explain to you that God is. That's why Christianity is a call to the world. Come and see what we have seen. There isn't much explanation because of the tools you have. We don't have, the tools are not enough to explain to the last bit, except you see it for yourself.
Wow.
Come and see.
Come and see.
Come and see. Come and see. So, the one who has seen actually is much more convinced than the one who is putting out assumptions, calculations here and there, has not seen. So, when you meet a young man, a young boy, 7 years old, who is so confident of the existence of God, and you make him feel like because he was not able to explain the way you explained force, then really God is not there. I say this and I say this again, that science may be benched on discovery and intellectual prowess, but Christianity is a matter of revelation. I have seen, so I say it is. I have seen, so I say it is. You have anything to say about this?
What you're saying is just beautiful, and I believe that is where those who easily think that there's a contradiction between Christianity and science will get it wrong. They don't realize that these two things are founded on two different things. Science is using empirical evidence, observation, and measurement to come to their conclusion, but not the same with faith, not the same with Christianity. We are not trying to use the kind of evidence that scientists use. We are not trying to use things you have observed, things you have measured before you come to a conclusion. If you as a scientist are looking for that in Christianity, you will not find it.
You will not find it.
You will not find it.
It's just as if a mechanic or any artisan who has a very wide variety of tools to choose from, and yet he just chooses to use a certain group.
Yes.
For instance, if you are going to go to a mining field with a pickaxe, you never know that there's oil under the ground except you have an excavator.
Look at that.
So you are using pickaxe. You say, oh, there's nothing there because the pickaxe can never get you there.
Yeah.
It will never get you there.
You want to use your predetermined concepts that you know in science you want to introduce your predetermined concepts in science into Christianity, but not so. I told you earlier that science is the study of the smoke, but Christianity is the study of the fire.
Exactly.
Studying smoke is different from fire. And so the concepts within Christianity are entirely different from the concepts within science. When it comes to Christianity, it's about what you've experienced. It's witnesses. Someone can just talk to you about this God, and you can believe. That belief, no one can measure for us that belief, how much we believe. No scientific method can measure the amount of belief that a person has. But we believe these things. These are all quantities that science can never measure for us. Science cannot measure our faith. So you find those people, those people who believe in scientism would just say that those things are only just like a fluke,
conjectures,
like they don't exist. But these are things that are real. People believe things. You believe things. Like that scientists have things they believe in. When they ask him, does a wife love you? And you honestly believe your wife loves you. How do you measure it? How are you able to explain to someone with a scientific method? The same way you cannot use a scientific method at home to measure how much your kids love you is the same way you should not try to use scientific method to measure how much of God exists.
Maybe you want to use a litmus paper and then
to measure. Maybe you can when they test it.
All right. At this point, I'd like us to We'll be moving shortly into the final part of today's meeting, where we'll be responding to a few questions that some people may have brought us. But before we leave this place, I just want to summarize the discussion that we've had here.
All right.
Basically, we have spoken about the fact that really there's no contradiction between true science and true Christianity.
Very true.
That whenever you find a contradiction, it is either Christianity misinterpreted or science having been made pseudoscience, where science is not in its true form, or where Christianity is not being purported in its true form. And even with answering some of the questions that have been sent to us, we'll be able to explain to you some of these points. Like I said, the time we have is very limited, and so I think we'll discuss this, but most probably we'll have a second edition of discussion where we will primarily taking a lot of questions. We will be able to answer a lot more questions rather than the number of questions we can answer today. All right. Like we said, we are now at the last part of today's session.
To answer some questions.
Where we're going to be taking a few questions to answer, and then we call it a day. Like I said, we might want to pick up this again so that we can have enough time, because a lot of questions came through. And I believe even as we are discussing, a lot of questions are coming through. Like I can see a few people putting up some questions in the comment section, but we might not be able to answer all of that now. So we'll also whatever we decide, we'll let you know, take more questions in our next session.
Yeah, and also you can send us your questions if you have any, and hopefully we'll consider them in our next video.
So I think at this point, we'll be putting our email address right beneath the screen, so that if you have any questions, you can just take a snapshot of the email and then send it over to us so we can respond to it. Without wasting much time, the first question I want us to answer. This person says, I want to ask why most scientists are atheists.
Okay.
I want to ask why most scientists are atheists. All right. Now, this question is a very interesting question, because this person is asking the question based on an assumption. The person is assuming that most scientists are atheists. So the real question is, are most scientists
atheists?
I do not think that is the case.
That is not the case.
I think we'll be going into a certain piece of statistic that buttresses the whole idea that indeed not most scientists are atheists. You know, actually, this statistics is going to go a long way to prove that most prominent scientists actually are theists.
Actually, most of the scientists that are making the most contribution to science are not actually atheist scientists.
All right.
You see, most of those that are making the most prominent contributions
to science. All right. And the reason why we can claim about the most prominent who are making the most contributions is because of this award scheme called the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, Nobel Prize.
The Nobel Prize. Now, the Nobel Prize is an award scheme that awards people that have had contributions that have conferred the greatest benefits to humankind in the area of medicine, physics, chemistry, economics, peace, and literature.
Yeah.
Basically, in chemistry, those who have had the greatest benefit in their exercising of chemistry, in their chemistry work to humankind, these are the people that give them these awards in these various categories.
This is interesting. You would think that scientist who is also a Christian or who is also a believer of God would rather all his time of being a scientist will be in maybe confusion, be in that kind of arguing in his heart, wondering how does he reconcile his faith and religion. But that's really not what we observe. Rather, their belief in God actually, probably, enable them to actually contribute more.
Facilitated.
You know, that somehow the statistics show that more of those that contributed the most to the advancement of science were those that believe in God.
In the concept of God.
It's amazing.
All right, let's go right in and start looking at some very interesting statistics concerning the Nobel Prize, especially for the ones that go to the science categories.
Yes, the physics, chemistry, and biology.
So to start with, the statistics says that
actually,
in the last century, at least, 65% Nobel Prize winners were theists. 65%, the umbrella figure, were theists. Now, let's go into the individual categories. Let's start with physiology or medicine. 91.1% over the last century, the winners of the Nobel Prize for medicine
or physiology,
91% of them are theists.
People believe in God.
They believe in God.
That means that only 8.9% of them they have three categories: are free thinkers, agnostics, or atheists. That means that all these three put together, only 8.9% of them form this category.
Exactly.
And this is not, and we're not referring to just fools. I don't want to say fools. Like people just illiterates who cannot form an opinion by themselves. These are people who have studied science, who are used to having proofs, having logical reason to what they accept.
Yes.
So it's not like their mother gave them an opinion. If so, they would have rejected the opinion with time.
Actually, almost every scientist's greatest dream is to win this award.
It's to win this award.
Yes.
That means that these are the people that maybe the brightest minds.
Yes. We could claim, permittably so, that the Nobel Awards for chemistry, physics, and the rest is the greatest award that can be conferred on any
person. Yeah. So these are not gullible people.
Yeah.
That anybody can say that these are just, they have been brainwashed. They were not brainwashed. These are people that have taken time to reconcile their heart and their mind.
You know, I have a concern about the term brainwash. A very interesting, especially when it's used about Christianity. But that'll take us into a lot.
Not today, yes.
Brainwashed.
So you find it interesting that these people that contributed the most are people that believe in God.
Let's move to physics. You would think that physics is very difficult too. But anyway, in physics, we have 95.3% of the winners over the past century being theists.
That means only 4.7% of them fall in the category of free thinkers, agnostics, and atheists. That's amazing. Look at this.
Yes. Then, almighty chemistry. Mighty chemistry. So we have about 92.9% of Christians, of theists, who won this award.
That's just about 7% of the population.
In general, adding everything together with the Nobel Prize, there are more of the winners of the award or recipients of the awards are theists than they are not theists. And
even with this, even the numbers you are mentioning, a great population of them are specifically Christians. When you find some of the figures are 68%, 65%,
exactly,
70-something percent.
So actually, the highest group of people concerning theism and atheism and religion to have been recipients is Christians.
It's Christians.
Yeah, it's Christians.
Specifically Christians.
Specifically Christians.
So we're not only talking about just Nobel Prize winners for someone to think that we have just picked up the maybe a few of the scientists who win this award. You mentioned the in general. There are over 60% of scientists who would rather be believers, who would rather be religious.
Exactly. So with this point, we are able to tell that the dividing factor among scientists is not science. When it comes to religion, faith, or theism and atheism, the thing that divides them concerning theism and atheism is not their science. Because actually the science is the one that brings them.
Science is the common factor.
It's the common factor.
It's the common place.
It's the union.
So some of these scientists, see, the intersection we have, right, is some of these scientists, they are all scientists, right? But then some of them also have, some of them are theists, some of them are atheists.
Exactly.
But then the common factor is the science.
The common ground is the science.
It's
just like this. Just like two scientists. One believes in, one supports Barca, the other supports Real Madrid. We can't say that, he's supporting Barcelona because science proves that Real Madrid is not a good team. No. It's a matter of, whatever it is it is not the science.
That means that the science is the common ground. That's not either proof or disprove any of them.
Yes. So to answer the one who sent us this question about most scientists being atheists, it is not true. It is, the fact still remains. It is not that most scientists are atheists.
And this is very interesting because, and let no one deceive you. Just because their voices are louder doesn't mean that they speak for the masses. Doesn't mean that just because the voices of atheists, atheists doesn't mean that they speak for all of science. The stats tell us that actually more scientists believe in God than don't. So it tells you that don't be confused. As a young student growing up in science, don't think that you have to set aside your belief in God just so you can advance in science. It's not anywhere so. Most of those who advance in science actually believe in God. That is the stats.
Level 200 medical students saying that, oh, now he has come to school. So you are seeing that God is not there. The one who has won Nobel Prize in medicine.
He's saying that he's
believing that God is there. Some of them are speaking in tongues.
Yeah, they're saying that. Yeah, they're saying that. Oh, now you've been enlightened. You've been enlightened.
You know,
don't let them deceive you.
You know what, man of God? At this point, I'm thinking that we should conclude.
Okay.
There are a lot of questions. I think 95% possibility that the next edition is going to be all about answering questions.
All right.
So if you've sent in your question and you feel that we've not yet responded to it, don't be worried. We'll be responding to your question. Just be patient. If you have any questions based on the discussions we've had, just send them in. Like I said, if you even have any disagreements, just share them with us. I think that the platform is open for us to share ideas. It is our intention to attempt to convince you. But just in case you are not yet convinced, share your ideas with us, share your concerns with us. Let us just do that peacefully and in a loving manner. And then we'll have a very important and productive discourse. That's the whole idea. The whole program is to have a discourse, is to have a communication, is to have a chat. Let's sit down and talk. Just like God said, come, let us reason together. And so that's what we are here to do. Man of God, I would like to take your last...
I like something you said, that if you are watching us and you still don't agree with us or anything, reach out to us. You are the ones who are interested in. Reach out to us and let's engage in useful conversation. And we believe that we would be able to share our opinions with you in a very enlightening way. Thank you so much for joining us. Man, thank you so much for an amazing program. I believe we'll come your way again.
All right, awesome. On this note, I'd like to conclude. We will come your way again. Next time is going to be greater, it's going to be better, it's going to be wonderful. I would like to end with this. If there's anyone out there who, one way or the other, has been convinced about some of our discussions, or anyone out there who has been looking to give his life to Christ, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that now. I think that at the end of the day, this is the most important part of what we are doing for us as Christians. So if there's anyone out there who wants to give your life to Christ, you can just place your hand on your chest and then say this prayer after me, believing. Say, Lord God, I come before you today. I believe in my heart that Jesus died for me and that he was raised from the dead by God for my sake. I confess with my mouth that Jesus is the Lord of my life. This very moment, I receive eternal life. I am a child of God. I have the life of God. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, if you said this prayer, God heard you. And this is the beginning of your life as a Christian. Reach out to us if you said this prayer. We would like to share some materials with you. We have a very special book by a man of God titled Now That You Are Born Again. We're going to send it to you so that you can study to begin your Christian life on a very high note, as it's supposed to be. Till we come your way again next week, God bless you and have a wonderful week. That's it next week. Next time, have a wonderful week. God bless you.
God bless you so much.